In today's video, we're talking about validation in minimal API using .NET 10. To make things simple and practical, I've created a small project called Book App, and the full source code is already available in the description below. Inside the program file, we're using Entity Framework Core with a real SQL database, and I'll walk you through how to add clean, scalable, and maintainable validation logic to your endpoints. We'll start with a basic minimal API endpoint, then integrate automatic model validation, custom validators, and the new .NET 10 features that make validation much easier. By the end of this video, you'll know how to structure your validations properly, avoid duplicated code, and make your API more robust and production ready. Inside my program file, I'll start by mapping a post endpoint for creating a new category. So I write app map post categories async. As you can see, minimal API allow us to inject dependencies directly into the delegate. No controller, no action method, no attributes. Everything is very lightweight. The first thing I want to do is validate the input. If the client sends a null body, we return a 400 bad request. So I'll add, if new category is null return results. Bad request invalid category data. Next, just like in the controller, we need to check if a category with the same name already exists. So I query the repository, compare the normalized names, and if a match is found, I return a 422 unprocessable entity. In minimal APIs, we don't have model state, so we send back a simple object with an error message. Then I create a new category model and call the repository to save it. If the save fails, we return a 500 using results problem, which is the minimal API equivalent of an internal server error. And finally, if everything goes well, we return a 200 OK with a success message. This is how easy it is to convert a controller-based endpoint into a clean minimal API using .NET 10. Less ceremony, same logic, more flexibility. Alright, now that our minimal API endpoints are ready, let's run the project and test them using Postman. Now I'll switch over to Postman. I'm going to create a new GET request and paste the URL of my endpoint. Remember, in minimal APIs, the root is exactly what we defined. Since we mapped /categories, the full URL becomes localhost/categories. I'll make sure the HTTP method is set to GET, and then I hit send. If everything is set up correctly, Postman will return the list of categories from the database. If the list is empty, the API will return a 404 not found response, which is totally normal. We haven't added anything yet. To fix that, let's quickly add a new category using the post endpoint. I'll switch the request to post, use the same URL/categories, go to the body tab, select raw JSON, and send a simple object like, when I hit send, the API confirms that the category was successfully created. Now if I go back to the GET request and send it again, you'll see the new category appear immediately. And that's it. Our minimal API is running, connected to the database, and fully testable from Postman's simple, clean, and very fast to build. To make validation more interesting, I added a few extra fields to my category DTO. I now have things like description, which allows me to validate string length. I also added display order, which is perfect for demonstrating range validation. And finally, fields like isActive and created date help illustrate optional and date-based validation rules. Now, before we start adding validation rules to our minimal API, we need to enable the built-in validation system. Inside my program CS, I'm just going to write builder.Services.AddValidation, and that's it. This single line activates the new built-in validation pipeline in .NET. It allows our DTOs to be automatically validated using attributes like required, range, email address, and all the standard data annotation attributes. So now, anytime a request comes into our minimal API, .NET will validate the incoming model automatically before it reaches our endpoint. Now inside my DTO, I can start adding validation attributes. For the name field, I want it to be required and have a minimum length, so I apply required and MinLength 4. I also add a max length just to keep the value clean. For the description field, I limit it to 200 characters using max length of 200. Then I add a display order field and I validate it using range from 1 to 100. This ensures that the user sends a number inside a valid range, and finally, I keep an isActive flag with a default value. All of these validations will be automatically executed by .NET thanks to the builder.Services.AddValidation line we added earlier. Now that our migration is done and the database has been updated, let's run the application again. I'll start the project, open Postman, and send a GET request to our /categories endpoint. And here we go. You can now see the new fields inside the response: description, display order, and isActive. This confirms that the database has been updated correctly and everything is wired into our minimal API. Now let's test the validation pipeline. I'm going to switch to a POST request and send a JSON object with invalid data. For example, here the name has only 2 characters, which is below the minimum length of 4. The display order is 500, which is far outside the allowed range of 1 to 100. When I send this request, .NET immediately blocks it and returns a 400 bad request with a full validation error payload. Each field has its own clear error message, and this happens before our endpoint code even runs. This is the power of the built-in validation system in .NET minimal APIs. Clean, automatic, and completely effortless. And that's it. With just a few lines of code, we've added clean, automatic, and fully structured validation to our minimal API in .NET 10. It keeps our endpoints simple, our data safe, and our application ready for real-world scenarios. Now that validation is in place, we can move on to building more advanced features.